Living in China makes me feel like I'm living in 2050 because there's just so many things that are so much more convenient or just more technologically advanced here. Like, I've been in China for a month now and I can't really fathom thinking about how I will live back in the United States because there's so many things that I've just gotten used to.
Gen X Chinese immigrants got totally fucked. My dad just sent me this message that makes me want to bawl my eyes out. If I knew what China would be like today, I would never leave my motherland. As a Chinese American, it's been really crazy to see how the TikTok ban has led to a mass migration to Xiaohongshu and how we are all becoming radicalized and dismantling our xenophobic views of China. Because growing up, when you are Chinese American, you don't identify with being Chinese and you also don't identify with being American, so you're kind of in like a gray space.
As a Chinese American born in China, there were so many moments from the TikTok congressional hearing that made me feel super uncomfortable because of the clear undertone of anti-Chinese sentiment. For context, I was born in China but moved to the US when I was 5.5. Since I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, I'm no stranger to the casual racist comments, things like, "Oh, I'm surprised you speak English so well," or "Where are you really from?" But honestly, Congress kind of took it to the next level.
I just saw a video on how Chinese Americans are facially structured different from Chinese people born in China because of the way we talk, and it is because like people who speak English use more of your mouth and your face to talk, so then your facial features become different from the people who are actually born in China because you use less muscle when you talk in Chinese. And I don't know if that's true or not.
Can we talk about how hard it is being an ABC in China? ABC is American born Chinese. I'm in China right now. I feel like if you tell your family members or anybody that you're talking to that you're not from here and you're from America, you just came back, and you just say 谢谢, and they're like, wow, your your Chinese is so good. They would be so proud of you. The bar is set so low nowadays.
Imagine leaving a country in the 1980s or 90s when it was struggling. Roads filled with bicycles instead of cars, power outages that happened regularly, families surviving on rationed food, and opportunities feeling scarce. You leave searching for a better life in America, only to return decades later and find that the very country you left behind is now unrecognizable. Not only has it caught up, it has in many ways surpassed the nation you moved to. That's the story many Chinese Americans are living right now. For them, visiting China today isn't just a trip home. It's a shock, a wave of regret, and a realization that the so-called American dream might not be what it used to be.
Gen X Chinese immigrants got totally fucked. My dad just sent me this message that makes me want to bawl my eyes out. If I knew what China would be like today, I would never leave my motherland. As a Chinese American, it's been really crazy to see how the TikTok ban has led to a mass migration to Xiaohongshu and how we are all becoming radicalized and dismantling our xenophobic views of China. Because growing up, when you are Chinese American, you don't identify with being Chinese and you also don't identify with being American, so you're kind of in a gray space. And most children of Chinese immigrants have Gen X immigrant parents that left in the 80s and 90s to come to America because they were trying to escape China. So naturally, growing up, I've only ever heard negative stories about China and how it was underdeveloped and people were hungry and there was not a lot of opportunity. It took a lot of unlearning for me over the years and dismantling my internalized racism and my internalized xenophobia for me to realize how great China is and how much I love China. And what's crazy is over the past 30 and 40 years, China has undergone extreme technological development to the point where I would argue that China is even more advanced than America right now. Here is a visual example of China's development. In the past 40 years, China has completely turned itself around from a third world country to a mass metropolitan cities. So having parents that left China when it was underdeveloped, their only impression of China was what they knew of, so they have no idea what China is now. My parents have not even been back at all. They've never been to Shanghai, they've never been to Chongqing, they've never been to Shenzhen, they've never been to any of the big cities. I'm from a very rural village in the north of China, so my family, their view of China is that it is still extremely underdeveloped and everyone is very poor. My parents don't really have the privilege to unlearn a lot of propaganda the way that I do. They're not as educated as I am, so they very much fed into the American Western propaganda machine, and they have a lot of xenophobic views themselves. So it's just it's really complicated to be in this position, and it's really crazy, and I'm very happy that everyone is finally seeing China for the way it is and how beautiful it is and how kind everyone is there, and honestly how great communism is and how the government really serves to help its people. but it's a lot of like confusion in my head because I'm unlearning a lot of what I was taught by my parents who have internalized xenophobic views. And it's even more sad that my parents came to America as America was on its arguably on its decline, and they left China as China was on its incline, I don't know, opposite of decline. So they kind of like were the generation that like lost both ends. Like they literally like they didn't get the good in any place. I am rambling all over the place, but another big reason why I think that China was able to do this technological development so fast is because they have a government that really prioritizes efficiency and productivity, and the collectivists, the collective, like the community over individualism. Like capitalism really prioritizes like the individual, so everything in America happens just like way slower, and it's just like it's really hard to like for America to advance as a country because of capitalism and Western individualism. But yeah, TLDR, I had to unlearn a lot about internalized xenophobia. A lot of Chinese immigrants in America still have a lot of internalized xenophobia, and it's really hard to change their views sometimes because they came here for a reason and they don't want to feel like shit that they like made the wrong choice. And getting that text from my dad was really sad because I think my dad is finally seeing like how great China is now and how maybe it would have been better if he never left in the first place. And this whole situation just emphasizes like how much I hate that America is just lying, honestly. Like they lie that they are a democracy and a free country that doesn't have a government that is totalitarian, but they clearly do because they are a country that emits just as much propaganda as the CCP or whatever. Like they do, like honestly, like even more propaganda than them, because the reason why my parents immigrated in the first place was because of Western propaganda, was because they were promised a better life, but they came here to be waitresses and servers and bussers. They came here to throw all their creative dreams away. They came here to honestly suffer just for their hometown in China to become this great place, but they already left and it's too late, and they already feel estranged from their motherland. So it is really sad.
As a Chinese American born in China, there were so many moments from the TikTok congressional hearing that made me feel super uncomfortable because of the clear undertone of anti-Chinese sentiment. For context, I was born in China but moved to the US when I was 5.5. Since I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, I'm no stranger to the casual racist comments, things like, "Oh, I'm surprised you speak English so well," or "Where are you really from?" But honestly, Congress kind of took it to the next level. Their consistent request for a yes or no answer was gaslighting. And it reminded me a little bit of when growing up, I would see people speak really slowly or in a really condescending manner to my parents because they thought my parents couldn't speak English. It was embarrassing to see that some of these congressmen didn't realize that Shou Chu was Singaporean, not Chinese, and that they didn't even give him the decency of learning how to properly pronounce his name. I would consider myself to be extremely proud of being Chinese. I definitely didn't always feel this way, and I definitely don't approve of everything that the Chinese government does. I mean, if you've been following me for a while, you would know that I'm Chinese Muslim, and clearly the government has been doing crazy things on that regard. I think what people also need to realize is that as much as China is a country, it's also people's ethnic identities. So you don't necessarily need to agree with the government and all of its policies in order to be proud of being Chinese. And I think that's why it's so particularly painful for me to see so much of this anti-Chinese sentiment, whether it be related to TikTok or COVID or anything else. Look, I get it. China is becoming a superpower in its own right, and it's becoming strong competition for the US. But that doesn't make it okay for the government to capitalize on these fears and use it as an excuse to exercise control over the free market. Anyways, I really hope TikTok doesn't get banned. I will riot if I'm not able to doom scroll or casually lurk on Swift Talk. Okay, bye.
For many Chinese families who emigrated to America decades ago, the decision made perfect sense at the time. China back then was still recovering from poverty, underdeveloped infrastructure, and a lack of global opportunities. America, on the other hand, was portrayed as the land of prosperity, where hard work guaranteed success. Parents left with dreams for their children's education, career, and future. But they could never have predicted how radically China would transform in the decades to come.
So we all notice that in America, no matter how hard you work, the system keeps telling you, just wait, it will trickle down. But it never does, because it was never meant to. Let me talk about China, what China did differently. Back in the 1980s, both China and US made a choice. China said, let some people get rich first, then help the rest catch up. It wasn't just a slogan, it was a plan. Grow the economy, let entrepreneurs build, but then use the wealth to leave the whole country, especially the poor. Meanwhile, in the US, you got this trickle-down economic mindset. Cut the tax for the rich, deregulate everything, and just hope for some crumbs fall to the rest of the people. It did not work. It was never about building a better life for working people. It was about letting corporations hold wealth and then write the rules. In the United States, money flows to big business. Corporations become oligarchs, and those oligarchs, they buy the media, they buy elections, control both parties. Is that democracy you're talking about, or that's just a boardroom in charge of your life? Now let's look at China. China also has billionaires. It also has private companies. But here's the difference. The government keeps them in check. You don't get to buy influences. You don't get to override public policy. No tech CEOs can influence Beijing policies to how to run the country. If your company grows rich in China, you are expected to reinvest in the nation. Alibaba pledged $15 billion to rural development. Huawei gives shares to its workers instead of the Wall Street. And some founders literally step back and donate their wealth. That's not charity, it's a national policy. Meanwhile, in the US, working class people pay more tax than billionaires. Healthcare, can't afford it. College, too expensive. Housing, out of reach. But Congress still busy doing whatever their corporate donor want. You call it a free market, but are you really free? I think you are trapped. You work more, earn less, and get told it's your own fault. So here's the bottom line. In America, capital owns the government. In China, the government still owns capital. That's why China could lift 100 million people out of poverty in a decade. And that's why in America, the wealth gap just keeps growing. You don't fix that with another tax cut. You fix it by taking power back from the oligarchs.
Can we talk about how hard it is being an ABC in China? ABC is American-born Chinese. I'm in China right now. I feel like if you tell your family members or anybody that you're talking to that you're not from here and you're from America, you just came back, and you just say 谢谢, and they're like, wow, your Chinese is so good. They'll be so proud of you. The bar is set so low nowadays. If I don't tell them that I just came back from America, talk to a regular person, they look at me like I'm stupid because I booked a reservation for this restaurant and they asked me for a yenjema, and I was like, what is that? 这是什么? And then I just assumed it was some type of QR code because of 二维码, you know? You should have got it. Well, she said this all in Chinese, but she's like, you should have got this when you booked the reservation. I was like, I never got that. I don't have a Chinese email, no nothing, Chinese number. I just have WeChat, and that barely gets me through, you know? My Alipay don't work properly, and then my WeChat Pay sometimes malfunctions. That is hell, because without WeChat Pay or Alipay in China, you cannot survive. A lot of places don't even take cash anymore. Everything's become cashless. Electronic. They take electronic payment, and they don't take credit cards, physical credit cards. I'm too American to be mainland Chinese. I probably know all the words that my family normally says, some things that are commonly brought up, household things that we talk about.
Fast forward to today, and the shock hits hard. Those who left returned to cities with skylines that rival or even outshine New York and Los Angeles. They walk through bullet train stations that feel more futuristic than anything in America. They see entire districts filled with smart technology, cashless payments, and clean, efficient public transport. For many Chinese Americans, it's an emotional punch. The place they once left behind now feels far more modern than the place they settled in. Some even confess, if I had known China would look like this, I never would have left.
Why would anybody want to leave China if China is so good? As a Chinese American born and raised in California, I can't completely speak of that, but I can give and share my perspective because my parents fled China to Taiwan and then Taiwan to California. And I still see till this very day, 43 years later, the level of brainwashing that my mother has in regards to her views about America. I have pled with her for 10 years to actually help me with my dual citizenship to Taiwan, and she wouldn't. She will refuse because of her brainwashing. So just like you guys are starting to awaken to what's going on in China and what life is like in China, they were also told things for several years about what life is like in America. And even though America has its negatives, it paints a picture of like freedom, prosperity, and then possibility to build like a new life, right? Capitalism. Hey, the American dream. Everybody can make it here. We also have to think about the implications of religion, right? There are actually Chinese people who are Christians, and, you know, doing Bible study is a big no-no. It's like, it's hush hush. So to avoid persecution and to be able to actually openly practice Christianity as well as other religions in China, people leave. People move to America. Then you have to think about social pressures and employment. Everybody there is freaking smart, and you should look up the education system and also the college system, and how like in high school they are studying for these exams that will literally determine not only if you're going to get into college, but what a major you could apply to. Like, you have to have a certain score to even be able to apply. Like, not everybody gets to be like, oh, I want to become a doctor when I grow up, and they could apply to med school. No, you actually have to, from a small young age in high school, test into the possibility of applying as a biology major in college, because you have to be academically astute. That's a lot of pressure, which will narrow your possibility of what level of education you could receive, and then what job you can get outside of that when you graduate from college. So it's extremely cutthroat because everybody's extremely smart from a young age. And I know I'm just joking. I don't know when they learned the multiplication table, but they're like first grade, they already know how to multiply. I mean, it's super competitive. So knowing that, they leave to come to America because, again, there's more possibilities of finding a job, right? And you could be the person that got like a C in high school, but in America, sadly, you're the A student. Like, you know, you're the A student getting into Ivy Leagues. Okay, this video is getting long, but a lot of people actually move out to America because their family have moved here first. So my father followed after his mother, which is my grandmother, because she first moved to California. And then my father brought my mother over, and they got married here. And so then I was born. So a lot of people stay. And somebody asked me in another question, like, well, why don't you leave if China was so great? Or, you know, all my family live in California or Texas. And my father passed away like a few months ago, 4 months ago, in September 2024. So it's just my mother. It's just my mother and I. And she's 76. And I was not brought up to just leave her because of my own selfish desires and to live abroad or like live in Europe, which I totally want to. But I'm not going to leave my 76-year-old mother by herself, like in a big ass house where it's going to be difficult for her to, you know, navigate and get up and down the stairs as she gets even older. So I am choosing to stay with my mother until she passes. But that's the sacrifice I'm willing to make.
This is a great question, and it's a great moment we talk more about statistics. So most Asian Americans view their country of origin as favorable, but China is an exception. Chinese Americans are not. However, in this case, I can only say one, the reporters made a mistake, which is very unlikely. Number two, this is manipulating the public with a false statement. Why? This is the same research. When we make such strong statement, picking out an individual group, you have to compare that sample with a random sample. What does that mean? When you say Chinese American is an exception viewing their country negatively. Does that also apply to average American or Asian American in general? So this is the same study by Pew Research, and this shows different Asian subgroups and how they view different countries. Chinese American among all the Asians are the ones see China most positive. The score is significantly higher comparing to any other subgroups. So a more valid conclusion as a news title would be everybody hates China now. However, Chinese Americans love their country of origin a little bit more. This would be the correct conclusion the public should be aware of. Everybody is criticizing China now, including me. I complain about a lot of issues in China. However, most people don't complain about things they don't care. These complaints in many cases indicate we wish China does better. If you want to spot more lies by journalists, even if you don't like statistics or math, I highly recommend you read more on philosophy. Here's a great book I recommend, A Short History of Chinese Philosophy by Feng Youlan. It's available in English and Chinese. It's somewhere online. Another very good mindset you can have is just look into any journalism majors, college courses. The math training they have doesn't really match, for example, scientists or engineers. They don't really understand statistics, so wake up today and read.
The irony is painful. Many Chinese Americans worked long hours, chasing the American dream, only to find themselves struggling with rising healthcare costs, unaffordable housing, and stagnant wages. Meanwhile, their relatives back in China climbed into the middle class, buying apartments, sending their kids to top universities, and enjoying lifestyles that feel unattainable in the US. For some returnees, the regret isn't just about what they lost, but about the illusion they were sold. They realize the American dream hasn't just become harder. It's something China has started to provide for its own people.
Living in China makes me feel like I'm living in 2050 because there's just so many things that are so much more convenient or just more technologically advanced here. Like, I've been in China for a month now and I can't really fathom thinking about how I will live back in the United States because there's so many things that I've just gotten used to. First things first, takeout here is so easy. The options are also so much bigger. And usually things come very fast, and most importantly, there's usually not that big of a service fee. The food delivery people ride on electric bikes or like motorcycles, which makes delivery so much faster because they can like literally swerve around things. And then also it makes labor cheaper, so it makes delivery fees cheaper because they don't have to drive an actual car. Next thing, you guys don't know the power of WeChat here in China. WeChat is technically a messaging app, but here in China, people do everything on WeChat. People pay with WeChat. People can order a taxi on WeChat. People can order takeout on WeChat. But at the same time, because WeChat is the app that encompasses everything, a lot of things become also much more convenient. Next, we got to love Chinese transportation conveniency. The subways here in China are just so much better than New York subway. Woo. New York subways are a lot older, so obviously they're not going to be as great. But when I went to NYC and used the subway for the first time, I think I cried because there were no escalators. There's just stairs everywhere. That's the most draining part. Like, forget about the fact that there's no cover and people can just jump into the subway lines. I was mostly annoyed by the fact that there was no escalator, because here in China there's escalators everywhere down and up the subway stations. Also, I think in China there's just so many things you can do at night aside from nightlife and clubbing, because I think in the States the only things open till like 3-4 a.m. are like the clubs and things like that. But in China, most malls don't close until 9 or 10, and then restaurants can stay open like all the way until like 5 in the morning. So there's a lot of things you can do at night here in China. And finally, if you're a big city person, I genuinely don't think there is any country that does city life better. In the US, we have only New York City, but in China, there's so many different cities that are just as big, if not even bigger than New York. Obviously, don't want to over glamorize life in China, because there's definitely things about China that it's very stressful. The work culture here is insane. Like, a lot of young people in China are like super stressed because having to work over 8 hours a day. If you're just here for vacation, staying for a couple weeks or so, China is such an amazing place that I feel like should be on everyone's travel lists.
I just saw a video on how Chinese Americans are facially structured different from Chinese people born in China because of the way we talk. And it is because like people who speak English use more of your mouth and your face to talk. So then your facial features become different from the people who are actually born in China because you use less muscle when you talk in Chinese. And I don't know if that's true or not because my sister is Chinese and she's like the basic Asian looking person. But right now we're in China and my dad has a million friends instead of my mom. So every time we go out to dinner with their friends, for some reason, they always say, oh my gosh, like your older daughter, which is me, she looks so American. And like no one says that about my sister. And even so many times when I go shopping, literally yesterday I was shopping, right? And then the person who was working there, she was like, oh, like this will fit you because you're more of like the westernized look and you probably would like this type of style, which I really did like you knew me, but like how? And she was like, yeah, you look like more American, whatever. I don't know if it's because I'm like tan. I don't even know what will make me more Americanized to the eyes of Chinese people. That's why I don't think it's because I'm an ABC, because my sister is too and no one says that about her. So I don't know what it is.
What really drives this sense of regret are the personal stories. Imagine someone who left a small town in Guangdong, where their family had dirt floors and kerosene lamps. They returned 30 years later to see that same town now filled with high-rises, shopping malls, and modern highways. They sit with childhood friends who never left and realize those friends now own multiple properties and run thriving businesses. That contrast forces a reflection. Leaving once felt like escape, but now it feels like abandonment. It's not uncommon to hear Chinese Americans whisper to themselves, "What if I stayed? What if I never left?"
I heard from my friends in China that some Chinese people regretted coming to US and Canada. They were earning something like $1,000,000 per year, $1,000,000 per year in China, and in US and Canada they can only find a job that is giving them 70 to 80k USD per year, which is a huge downgrade of course.
Hello, TikTok refugee. 你们好, I'm Janine. I'm a Chinese American, and I feel like I need to justify and defend both countries just a little bit from someone who has traveled and lived in both countries. So yes, everything you see on Rednote, it's real. The food, the culture, the city, the people, there's so much culture there. China has 5,000 years of history. There's just, you have to go there. It's so underrated and so affordable. Everybody's talking about Korea and Japan, but did you know now the Koreans are traveling to China because they're finally seeing the value, the beauty, the culture, the food, the cost of living. It is the only country I want to travel to right now because hello, but I do have to defend US a little bit. Yes, things are much cheaper there if you're making US salary. For average Chinese citizen with an average salary, yes, they're gonna have the same struggles just like us. But they have so much more to do. They have so much options. They can walk at night. They can go home at 2 a.m. I've taken my kids out. We've been till midnight. I walked home at 11:30 p.m. by myself. No problem. It's so safe. That's what I miss the most about China. I'll be crazy to walk out here, and I live in a nice neighborhood. I'd be crazy to go out on the street. Just you don't see people walking. It's not the way of life. And the infrastructure, oh my God. People always talk about German, Japanese high-speed train, but did you know China have the newest, fastest, most extensive railroad system in the entire world? The airports, the high-speed train stations, the bus, the subways. I don't even take the New York subway anymore because it's crap. And I mean, I don't have to worry about getting robbed like I do in London, Paris, Milan, Barcelona. No, in China, I can wear whatever I want. I don't have to worry about it. It's the basic necessity as a citizen. Am I asking a lot?
The bigger question now is, what does this mean for the future? Some Chinese Americans are even considering moving back, drawn by lower living costs, better infrastructure, and a sense of belonging they didn't always find in America. Others wrestle with the painful truth that their sacrifices were real, but perhaps not as rewarding as they hoped. The story of regret isn't universal, but it reveals something powerful. China's rise isn't just statistics and skyscrapers. It's about reshaping lives, rewriting destinies, and forcing people to question whether the narratives they believed decades ago were ever true. The truth is, regret is a heavy emotion, but it also carries a challenge. What lessons can be learned? For those who left China decades ago, their story is a reminder that no nation stays the same forever. For those watching today, it's a challenge to rethink what progress really means and where the future is being built. Because sometimes, the place you left behind becomes the place the world looks to next.